Well, we're characterized by inertia and ignorance. It's not easy to understand history. It's especially not if you read it properly. You know, I had a client at one point who was an unbelievably naive person. You cannot overestimate her naivety, no matter how hard you tried. Her parents taught her that adults were angels, literally. And she believed that in a strange sense. When I met her, she was in her 20s. And she had this extraordinarily naive view of people and had been hurt. And if you're very naive and you've been hurt by someone, you often disintegrate because it blows your world apart, and that's what had happened to her. And I said, she had a university degree, and I said, well, look, like in the liberal arts, I said, didn't you read any history? And she said, well, yeah. And I said, well, didn't that disturb the whole adults are angels hypothesis? And she said, well, I read it, but I just compartmentalized it. Yeah. And that gave me the key to what was wrong with her, and we successfully dealt with it. But I had her to begin her process of cure, oddly enough, because she had to understand malevolence, because she had been touched by it, right? She had to understand it because her naive worldview had been shattered by the hand of malevolence. I had her read a book called Ordinary Men by Browning, and it's a study of these Polish policemen, German policemen who were sent to Poland after the Nazis had marched through Poland, and they were sent to police Poland, and they were, you know, decent middle-class guys, essentially, most of whom had been hit maturity before Hitler had come to power, so they weren't indoctrinated Nazis, you know, not like the Nazi youth types were, and they had to go to Poland and be policemen under wartime conditions. And they had a very humane commander, and he told all of them that they were going to have to do things that would be far more brutal in all likelihood than they were normally prepared to do in their role as non-military policemen, but that they could go back to their old job if they wanted to. So it wasn't top-down enforcement of an authoritarian ethos. And Browning documents their transformation from the guy next door, you know, the policeman next door, into people who were taking naked pregnant women out into fields and shooting them in the back of the head. And it's a brutal book because, well, these men, it's like, it just ruined them to do that to themselves. They were physically ill during the process of transformation, you know, and he does a very good job of documenting how an ordinary person transforms into a Nazi murderer. And I had to read that. I said, but don't you compartmentalize it. This is about you, right? This isn't about someone else. When you read history, you think, well, that's about someone else. It's like, unless maybe you're a victim and you identify with the victims. It's a very rare person who reads history and identifies with the perpetrators. But unless you read history and identify with the perpetrators, then you don't understand history at all. And so who wants to understand that? And I get my students, I said, look, I've told them this for 30 years. Here's something you have to understand. If you were in Nazi Germany, the statistical probability is overwhelming that you would have been a perpetrator, right? You think you would have rescued Anne Frank. It's like, think again. Those people are very, 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 very rare. They put their lives on the line to do that. They put their families' lives on the line to do that. You think you're one of those people? Really? It's like that. All that means is that you know nothing. You know nothing about yourself. You know nothing about people. You know nothing about politics or economics or history. It's a harsh lesson.
But the truth about Germany in the 1930s, it was probably the most educated society the world had seen to that point in time. Education alone, cleverness in inverted commas alone, intelligence alone,
sophisticated civilization alone. No, right. It's like, well, you don't get to paradise, you don't get to heaven without harrowing hell first, right? And who's going to do that? Like, that's a terrible thing to do. It isn't even clear that you can survive it. No, I mean, it's brutally damaging to come to terms with your own proclivity for malevolence, and so people don't do it, and it's no wonder. But the funny thing is, and this is also something that I think that the people who've been watching my lectures have been attracted by, especially the young men. It's like, until you understand that you're a monster, until perhaps you even develop that as a capacity, you don't have the moral force to do good. And so not only is that descent to begin with necessary to scare you straight, right? To make you understand what exactly it is that you're dealing with. But you don't even have the strength of character to be good until you understand just exactly what sort of monster you can be. I have a rule in my book, Rule 5. Do not let your children do anything that makes you dislike them.
Yeah, I read it.
It's a meditation on the monstrousness of parents. It's like, don't underestimate yourself, your capability to ruin your children's lives. You let them act in a manner that makes you disapprove of them. You will take revenge on them in ways you cannot even imagine. And unless you understand that, you're not going to be careful enough as a parent, and you're not going to set proper boundaries. Don't let your children annoy you. It's a very bad idea. Now, that means that you should try to regulate your proclivity to be annoyed, and you should try to be civilized, and you should talk to your partner, your wife, or your husband about your oversensitivities and foolishnesses. But having said that, you need to know who the monster is, and it's you. So